Welcome to the Hot News Channel, where we strip away the noise to analyze today's breaking stories. It is Thursday, January 29th, 2026.
And if you are listening to this, you already know that today isn't just another day in the news cycle. We are looking at a convergence.
A convergence.
A moment where three separate existential threats, military, economic, and domestic, are all colliding in real time.
Exactly. We usually take these stories one by one. Maybe we do a segment on the economy and then we'll do a segment on foreign policy. But today, you can't separate them. Yeah. They're completely fused. We're talking about a potential hyperwar in the Middle East that makes, everything before it look like a skirmish.
Right.
We're talking about a constitutional crisis right here on American soil, involving federal agents and the use of lethal force.
And then there's the big one. The one that hits everyone.
Perhaps the most terrifying one for your wallet, yes. Yeah. We are watching the fracturing of the entire global economic order.
It really is a game changer. And I don't use that term lightly. I hate the buzzwords,
We hear it all the time.
But this fits. This really, really fits. We are not just talking about troop movements or, interest rates ticking up a quarter point.
No, this is different.
We were talking about an armada heading toward the Persian Gulf. And a specific ultimatum that if it goes wrong, and there's a very high probability it will.
What happens?
Could send oil to $700 a barrel.
$700. That number, it sounds fake. It sounds like hyperbole.
It sounds completely impossible until you actually run the supply numbers. And if that happens, it effectively ends the global financial system as we currently know it.
How so?
The derivatives market, the supply chains, currency valuation, it all just breaks.
So our mission today is to synthesize the hard data. We've got reports from military analysts, economic forecasters, on-the-ground reporters. We're going to try to uncover the hidden truth behind these headlines.
There's a lot to unpack.
Let's start with the most immediate threat. The brink of war between the U.S. and Iran.
This is where the rubber meets the road. This is the spark.
Okay, so we have reports coming in, specifically analysis from Kim Iverson and also the Daily Jekran. They're confirming a massive armada led by the USS. Abraham Lincoln is, right now, steaming toward Iran.
Yes.
Now, we see carrier groups move all the time. Why is this one different? What makes this deployment so alarming?
It's the posture. It's the rhetoric that's accompanying it. This isn't a freedom of navigation exercise.
Right. This isn't just showing the flag.
Not at all. President Trump has been quoted using very specific, very aggressive language. He said the force is moving, quote, quickly with great power, enthusiasm, and purpose.
Enthusiasm and purpose.
Enthusiasm. That is a chilling choice of words for a carrier strike group.
It implies an eagerness.
An eagerness for engagement, exactly. And we had to put this in context. This isn't happening in a vacuum. This follows Operation Midnight Hammer from June of last year.
Okay, refresh our memory on Midnight Hammer. What was that?
That was the operation that allegedly targeted Iranian nuclear facilities. The administration and Israeli intelligence, they largely thought that solved the problem.
I thought they dealt with it.
They thought they had set the Iranian program back a decade. But, clearly, based on the intel we're seeing now, it didn't.
So they took a swing, they missed, or maybe didn't hit hard enough, and now they are bringing the sledgehammer.
That's a good way to put it.
The Daily Jekran is reporting that diplomacy is, quote, thinning by the hour. The question isn't if Washington can hit Iran, but how? And, more importantly, what happens the morning after?
The what's next.
But what is the trigger here? What's the immediate cause? We've dug into the reports, and it seems to hinge on a very specific ultimatum.
Right. And this is the key. This is the whole thing. According to the analysis by Pepe Escobar, who was discussing this with Judge Napolitano, the U.S. has issued a demand that is practically designed to be rejected.
Designed to be rejected. So it's a pretext. You're saying it's like the Austro-Hungarian ultimatum to Serbia back in 1914.
That is the perfect analogy. It's a pretext. The demand is that Iran must strip itself of all nuclear capabilities and all of its long-range missiles.
Okay, now, playing devil's advocate for a second, that sounds like standard non-proliferation talk. We've heard that for 20 years.
On the surface, sure. But here is the kicker. Here is the part that makes it, impossible to accept.
What's there?
The demand requires Iran to disarm unilaterally, while Israel retains its full arsenal. Escobar argues this is an impossible ultimatum. He calls it simply capitulation or war.
Put yourself in Tehran's shoes for just a second.
For Tehran, this isn't a negotiation. It's not a deal. It's an existential threat.
It's life or death for the regime.
Absolutely. They view giving up their missiles, which are their only real deterrent, while their primary regional adversary keeps everything. They see that as national suicide.
Yeah.
They look at Libya. They look at what happened to Gaddafi after he gave up his program.
They're not going to make that mistake.
They're not going to do it.
So the administration has boxed themselves in. They've made a demand Iran cannot possibly accept, and they've promised speed and violence if they don't.
Precisely.
But let's look at the other side of this equation. We so often hear about American military supremacy, and it is real, but what is the capability coming back at this Armada? Because the narrative in Washington, it seems to be that we can just strike and it's over.
Another cakewalk?
A cakewalk, to borrow a phrase from 2003.
And that is the dangerous disconnect. That hubris, that's what worries all the serious analysts. We have analysis from Mohammed Morandi, who was interviewed by Danny Haifong. Now, you have to understand, Morandi is close to the decision-making circles in Tehran.
So he knows what they're thinking.
He's very clear. Iran is preparing a response that will, in his words, obliterate U.S. Navy assets if they are attacked.
Obliterate. I mean, that's a very strong word when you're talking about a U.S. carrier strike group. These things are floating fortresses.
They are.
They have AGS defense systems, destroyers, submarines, a whole air wing. How do you obliterate that?
You do with asymmetry. You don't fight their fight. You change the battlefield. And look at the specifics. Pepe Escobar highlighted a particular asset that I think our listeners really need to understand. He calls them the ghost boats.
The ghost boats.
These are the Zulfiqar-class vessels.
Okay, break that down for us. What makes them a ghost boat?
Well, these aren't your standard patrol boats. First, they navigate at 40 knots. That is incredibly fast for any naval vessel.
So they can close distance quickly.
Very quickly. But their real trick, the ghost aspect, is that they are semi-submersible.
They can go under the water.
Not like a submarine, no. They can submerge just enough to evade radar. They can dip under the waves, bypass the radar horizon of the big destroyers, get within range, and then resurface to fire torpedoes.
So they pop up out of nowhere.
Precisely. Escobar mentions they carry 324-millimeter torpedoes, and they don't send one.
They send a swarm.
They send a swarm.
So imagine you are the captain of a U.S. destroyer. You're in the Persian Gulf. It's narrow. It's shallow. You have very limited maneuverability.
It's not the open ocean.
Not at all. And suddenly, your radar lights up with 50, maybe 100 fast-moving contacts peering out of absolutely nowhere, all inside your defense perimeter.
It's a saturation attack. The EGI system is brilliant, but it can only track and engage so many targets at once. A swarm attack is designed to overwhelm it.
Some are going to get through.
Exactly. The U.S. Armada is currently in the Arabian Sea, but if they enter the Gulf, they become, as Pepe Escobar put it, sitting ducks.
And that brings us to the real nightmare scenario, doesn't it? It's not just about sinking ships, as devastating as that would be. It's about the Strait of Hormuz.
The choke point of the world.
We hear about the strait all the time, but why is this specific moment different? We've heard threats to close it before. What's changed?
What's changed is that the Iranian parliament has reportedly authorized the closing of the strait. This isn't just a threat from a general anymore. This is a legislative authorization.
It's binding.
It's binding. If the order comes from the top, they close it. And we have data from Goldman Sachs, which Escobar cited, that paints a terrifying picture of what that means.
Okay, what's the damage? Lay it out.
If the Strait of Hormuz closes, 20 to 30% of the world's entire oil supply is instantly cut off. Gone.
So oil doesn't just go to $150 or $200 a barrel.
No. The projection is $700 a barrel.
Let's just pause on that for a second. $700. I want to make sure the listener really, really grasps what this means. This isn't just gas is expensive.
No, this is not about paying more at the pump. At $700 a barrel, the supply chain simply stops. It means the car doesn't run. It means the grocery store shelves are empty because trucks can't afford the fuel to get there.
Airlines are grounded.
The entire global economy seizes up. But on a macro level, it's even worse. The global derivatives market, which is worth quadrillions of dollars, a number that's almost meaningless, it's so large, is tied to these energy prices.
Explain that connection for us. How does a spike in oil price break the entire banking system?
Okay, so derivatives are essentially bets. They're financial instruments that bet on the future price of things. Mm-hmm. There are massive bets placed on oil remaining within a certain volatility range.
So banks and hedge funds are betting that the price of oil will stay, say, between $80 and $120.
Exactly. A spike to $700 is a black swan event times 10. It's an extinction-level event for the financial markets. It causes margin calls that no bank on earth, not a single one, has the liquidity to cover.
So they have to pay up on their bad bets, but the money isn't there.
The money doesn't exist. It causes the market to collapse instantly. It's not a recession. It's a total freeze of the global financial plumbing. ATM machines stop working.
So we are risking a global depression, a collapse of civilization's plumbing, to enforce an ultimatum that, as you said, experts agree Iran cannot possibly accept.
That's what's on the table.
This brings me to the domestic angle, because the justification for this is being debated fiercely right now in Washington. We saw Senator Marco Rubio testifying recently, and the analysis from Breaking Points and also Alexander Mercouris on this exchange is just fascinating.
It really was. It was a rare moment of accidental honesty in the Senate. Usually it's just speechifying.
Rubio was asserting the U.S. right to a preemptive defensive option, basically the old Bush doctrine. We can hit them before they hit us if we think they might hit us.
Right.
But Senator Rand Paul pushed back, and he used a very specific, very sharp analogy.
He did. He stripped away all the diplomatic jargon. He asked, hypothetically, if a foreign nation came to the U.S., bombed our air defenses, and kidnapped the U.S. president in a 4-hour operation, and he was referencing the extraction of Maduro in Venezuela,
right,
would we consider that an act of war?
Well, the answer seems pretty obvious.
And Rubio had to admit it. He said, of course it would be.
And that's the aha moment, isn't it? Rand Paul highlighted the fundamental one-way argument of U.S. foreign policy.
The hypocrisy.
We claim the right to do things to other sovereign nations, kidnapping their leaders, preemptive strikes that we would immediately, without hesitation, recognize as an act of war if it was done to us.
It exposes the exceptionalism that the rest of the world is just, getting tired of. Paul is basically saying, if we do it, it's defense. If they do it, it's terrorism. And that logic is breaking down.
And yet, despite Paul's very clear logic, the machine is moving forward. Rubio is talking about defending our personnel, but as Kim Iverson pointed out in her analysis, our personnel are stationed within range of Iranian missiles.
Her question is simple. If they are in danger, why are they there?
It's completely circular logic. We need troops there to defend the troops that are there. We need a fleet in the Gulf to defend the fleet that's in the Gulf. But the disconnect, the one we keep coming back to, between Washington's cakewalk mentality and the reality of a 90 million person nation with hypersonic missiles and ghost boats, that disconnect is where the danger lies.
It's where the miscalculation happens. It is. History is just littered with the corpses of empires that underestimated the smaller power.
And that danger isn't just military, it is profoundly economic. We touched on the $700 oil, but the dollar is already screaming for help even before the first shot is fired. Let's shift gears slightly. Let's go to Section 2, the economic fallout and the death of the dollar.
This is happening right now, regardless of the war. The war would just be the accelerant, the gasoline on the fire.
We have data from Peter Schiff, and this was analyzed by both Breaking Points and Daniel Davis. Schiff is sounding the alarm. I mean, he is ringing it loud. He says the world is pulling the rug out from under the United States. The dollar is hitting lows we haven't seen since 2022.
And he's not calling this a recession. That's the key.
No. What's he calling it?
He's calling it a funeral procession for the dollar.
A funeral procession? That is a grim image.
It's grim, but the hard data supports him. Just look at gold. Gold is trading at astronomical highs. Over $5,400 an ounce was mentioned in the sources.
$5,400. I remember when $2,000 an ounce seemed insane. I remember when people were saying gold was just a boomer rock and crypto was the future.
Well, the central banks of the world are not buying crypto. They are buying physical gold. And that price, $5,400, isn't just about jewelry demand or electronics. That price is a fear index.
It's a thermometer.
It's a thermometer for how sick the global financial system is. It means central banks, we're talking China, Poland, India, Russia, are actively dumping U.S. dollars and buying gold. They are hedging against the collapse of the U.S. currency.
Why now, though? Why this sudden acceleration?
Because they see the debt. They see the political instability, and they see the weaponization of the dollar through sanctions. Colonel Douglas Macgregor weighed in on this as well. He warned of what he calls a 1789 moment.
He's referencing the French Revolution.
Exactly. His point is that reckless government spending, unsustainable debt, and the destruction of the currency printing money eventually lead to a breaking point where the population simply cannot survive.
And the recklessness isn't just in the private sector.
No, it's government spending that has become completely unmoored from reality. We are borrowing trillions to fund these potential wars, to pay the interest on the debt we already have, and then we're printing money to cover all of it. Every new dollar printed devalues every dollar in your pocket.
And while we're focused on that, the rest of the world is realigning. They are seeing the writing on the wall. We have a fascinating report from Alex Christoforou about the UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and his trip to Beijing. This feels like a massive pivot.
It is huge. I mean, you have to remember, the UK has been one of the staunchest U.S. allies, the special relations.
They've parroted the anti-China rhetoric for years now.
Absolutely. But now, Starmer is in Beijing with a massive delegation. We're talking HSBC, Airbus, Jaguar, Land Rover. As Christoforou put it, he is there for one reason. Money, money, money.
It's a survival move, isn't it? The UK economy is stagnating. They need investment. They need trade.
Exactly. Ideology is a luxury when your economy is on its knees. Survival is pragmatic. And you have to connect this to Mark Carney, the former head of the Bank of England.
What did he say?
He recently admitted that the international rules-based order is ruptured.
That is diplomatic speak for the old way is dead. The American-led system is broken.
It means the system built in 1945, with the U.S. at the center, is gone. It's over. The world is moving on.
So the UK is hedging, Canada is making deals with China, the BRICS nations are building their own payment system specifically to bypass the dollar. They are literally building a lifeboat while the U.S. Titanic is steering full steam ahead toward the iceberg.
And meanwhile, what is the U.S. doing? It's isolating itself with tariffs and war threats. We are becoming the crazy man at the end of the hallway, to quote Colonel McGregor again.
Explain that.
If you are a country like India or Brazil or even Saudi Arabia, you look at the U.S. seizing Russian assets, I mean, literally stealing sovereign wealth or threatening to seize Iraqi bank reserves, and you say to yourself, I can't trust my money in New York anymore.
And trust is the fundamental currency of banking. If you lose trust, you lose the reserve status.
And once that reserve status is gone, the ability to print money without immediate catastrophic hyperinflation is gone. That's the cliff.
So the dollar is dying a death by 1,000 cuts, or maybe 1,000 gold bars being bought by foreign central banks. But if the international situation is volatile, the domestic situation is a powder keg. We talked about a 1789 moment that implies domestic revolution. Let's move to Section 3, domestic unrest and the militarization of ICE.
This is the 1789 moment coming home to roost. It's not just economic, it's physical, it's on the streets.
We have to talk about the Alex Preddy incident in Minneapolis. This has been covered extensively by Breaking Points and Due Dissidents. It's a story that is polarizing the country. And for those who may have missed the details, Alex Preddy was killed by federal agents, specifically ICE agents, during a protest.
And the narrative battle here is just fierce. It's a real Rashomon effect. Everyone sees this completely different truth based on their politics. The Trump administration, through figures like Kash Patel and Tom Homan, is claiming Preddy was an armed threat.
And they're leaning hard on one fact.
They're leaning hard on the fact that he had a concealed carry permit and was armed at the time of the incident.
Which is factually true. He did have a gun.
He did. But the counter evidence, which has been analyzed by Aaron Mate and Crystal Ball, tells a very, very different story about how he was killed. They've reviewed the footage frame by frame.
And what does that footage show?
The footage is incredibly disturbing. It shows Preddy was on all fours, on his hands and knees. He had been blinded by pepper spray.
So he was incapacitated.
Completely incapacitated. He wasn't aiming a weapon, he wasn't advancing, and yet he was shot 9 times in the back.
9 times in the back, while on his hands and knees.
Now, there's an acknowledgement that an agent's rib was broken in a scuffle before the shooting. There was a physical confrontation. But the use of lethal force against a man who was effectively neutralized on the ground, blinded, it raises massive questions about the rules of engagement for federal agents on U.S. soil.
And this brings up the hypocrisy angle that Aaron Mate really hammered home. The same political faction that vehemently defends the Second Amendment, the right to carry, the right to self-defense against government tyranny, is now demonizing a citizen for exercising that very right because he was protesting against them.
It's a total inversion of values. If you're a Second Amendment purist, Preddy should theoretically be a martyr for the cause. He was an armed citizen standing up to federal agents.
But because he was protesting ICE.
He's branded a terrorist.
Yeah.
It shows that for some, rights are becoming partisan privileges, not universal principles.
And this isn't just about one bad apple or one chaotic moment. There is a broader trend here, and it's been identified by Jackson Hinkle and Due Dissidents. The Israelification of U.S. police.
Now, that's a controversial term, but it describes a very specific phenomenon. It refers to the training of U.S. police forces, specifically groups like the NYPD, and now it seems ICE by Israeli security forces.
And what does that training actually entail? What are they learning?
It involves importing military occupation tactics into domestic policing. In an occupation, the population is viewed as the enemy. In policing, the population is supposed to be the community you serve.
You're blurring that line.
When you blur that line, when you train cops to think like soldiers in hostile territory, you get what happened in Minneapolis. The tactics used, the mindset, it looks a lot like the tactics used in the West Bank.
Interestingly enough, Breaking Point's reported on a drawdown of ICE in Minnesota following this shooting. Tom Homan was sent there to restore order, but now there's talk of a tactical retreat. What does that signal?
It signals that the administration knows they pushed too far. They're facing a public backlash they didn't calculate. When you treat your own citizens like insurgents, you risk creating an insurgency. You radicalize the moderates.
And it's not just violent suppression, it's legal suppression. We have the case of Mahmoud Khalil, a Columbia student. Katie Halpone interviewed his lawyer. This story it's just baffling if you believe the government only targets threats.
Right. If you assume the government goes after the bomb throwers, this case makes absolutely no sense. Khalil wasn't a violent protester. He wasn't throwing Molotov cocktails. He was a graduate student.
Studying what?
Negotiation and conflict resolution. He was the mediator between the university and the student protesters.
So he was the reasonable voice. He was the guy trying to de-escalate the situation.
Exactly. And the analysis suggests that's precisely why he was targeted. The administration went after him because he was effective and moderate. If you take out the reasonable negotiator, what are you left with?
You scare everyone else into silence. Or you leave only the radicals, which then justifies more crackdowns.
It's a chilling effect. And Halper's analysis points out that even though there were court orders staying his removal, his deportation, he was detained anyway. It's a complete disregard for the rule of law in favor of performative cruelty. It's a message. We can do this, so we will.
Yeah. And Congressman Ro Khanna, he weighed in on this via Zetio. He called it a moral test for the Democratic Party, specifically regarding ICE funding. But he also admitted, and this was somewhat grim, that funding or no funding, it wouldn't have saved victims of immediate violence like Renee Good or Alex Preddy.
The culture of the agency has become the issue, not just the budget.
So we have a domestic force acting with impunity, trained in military tactics, while the actual military is being stretched to the breaking point abroad. Which leads us, I think, to Section 4, the Ukraine front.
Ah, yes, the forgotten war. The war that was on every front page for 2 solid years and is now slid completely off the Chiron. Because it is collapsing.
We have reports from history legends and also Jackson Hinkle regarding the Seversk salient. For those of our listeners who aren't military strategy buffs, what is a salient and why does its collapse matter so much?
A salient is basically a bulge in the front line. It's a position that juts out into enemy territory, and it's very hard to defend because you can be attacked from 3 sides at once. The Seversk salient was a critical Ukrainian stronghold.
And its fall suggests what?
It suggests the entire frontline integrity is crumbling. It's not just one town falling. It's like a key structural support being knocked out. The dam is breaking.
The Ukrainian army, according to Colonel Douglas McGregor, is a shadow of its former existence. He says the manpower just isn't there anymore.
They have lost the flower of their youth. An entire generation has been wiped out.
McGregor didn't mince words at all. He said the war is effectively over.
Militarily, yes. The Russians are advancing. They have the attrition advantage in artillery, in manpower, in everything. But politically, the war is being kept on life support.
By who?
McGregor implies Zelensky is being kept in place by London and Washington solely to prolong the conflict, to bleed Russia for just a little bit longer, despite the total destruction of the Ukrainian army.
So it's a zombie war. The body is dead, but it's being forced to keep moving.
It is. And the diplomatic front is just as bleak, if not more so. We have reports from Alex Christofor and Pepe Escobar about the so-called Abu Dhabi talks.
They called it kabuki theater, performance art. Why?
Because the positions are completely irreconcilable. You have Friedrich Merz, the German opposition leader who is likely the next chancellor, stating bluntly that Ukraine will not join the EU by 2027. He just rejected Zelensky's timeline outright.
That was the carrot, wasn't it? That was the promise Zelensky was dangling for his people. Keep fighting, endure the cold, endure the death, and we will join Europe.
And Europe just slammed the door in their face. Meanwhile, on the ground, the reality is stark. Russia is taking territory and demanding total neutrality. Zelensky is out there claiming he has security guarantees from the West. But are they real?
Well, look at what Senator Rubio said. He hinted at French troops potentially acting as peacekeepers. Not American troops, French troops.
Which is just bizarre. And Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, dismissed any Western troop presence entirely. He said it's a non-starter. It will never happen.
So you have Zelensky selling a fantasy to his people, EU membership and security guarantees from NATO, while the West is quietly stepping back, the Germans are saying no, and Russia is advancing on the battlefield.
It's a recipe for a catastrophic endgame for Ukraine. It's a betrayal. The West used Ukraine as a battering ram against Russia, and now that the ram is broken, they're looking for the exit.
It seems like everywhere we look, Iran, Ukraine, Minneapolis, the official narrative is just crumbling against the hard reality of the situation, which is probably why there's such a massive push to control the narrative. If you can't fix the reality, you fix the perception.
And that leads us to our last section, Section 5, the war on information.
When you can't win the argument on its merits.
You silence the debate. It's the oldest play in the authoritarian book.
And we are seeing this play out globally. Let's start with Australia. Do dissidents reported on their new hate speech laws. These aren't just a slap on the wrist. We are talking about fines of up to 5% of global revenue for social media platforms.
The mechanism of this law is what's so terrifying. It's not about incitement to violence. It criminalizes speech that causes a reasonable person to fear.
Fear, that is incredibly subjective. My fear is different from your fear. What I find threatening, you might find to be legitimate political speech.
It is entirely subjective. And that is the point. It makes the law completely malleable. It can be weaponized. If I criticize a government's war crimes and a supporter of that government says, that criticism makes me fear for my safety because it incites anger, suddenly political speech becomes hate speech.
Critics argue this is designed specifically to do what?
To ban criticism of Israel or of U.S. foreign policy, to make dissent illegal by labeling it as dangerous.
And the tech giants are playing ball. They aren't fighting this. We have reports from Wally Rashid and Aaron Matei about TikTok. We know TikTok has been under immense pressure, and now, under the influence of Larry Ellison and its new ownership structure, they have officially banned the term Zionist as hate speech.
And this is the great irony of our time. The so-called free speech absolutists, the tech billionaires who promised open platforms, are presiding over systems that are tightening control faster than ever. They're enforcing ideological conformity.
You can't use a political term to describe a political movement without being banned. Zionism is a political ideology. Banning the word prevents you from even discussing the topic.
It's Orwellian. You remove the word from the dictionary, you hope to remove the thought from people's minds. But there is a pivot happening here too, purely on the business side of things. Novara Media reported on Elon Musk and Tesla.
The sales are down.
Sales are down. The brand has become toxic for a large part of the liberal car-buying public, and Chinese competition like BYD is just eating their lunch on price and quality.
So what does Musk do?
He pivots to Optimus, the robots. He's promising millions of humanoid robots that will change the world.
Novara Media's analysis of this was really sharp. They argue this is the ultimate capitalist fantasy. You replace the messy, unionizing, complaining human worker with a robot that you own completely.
But it's also a sign of desperation. When your core business is failing, you sell the future. You sell the sci-fi dream. But in the present, real people are leaving these platforms. Aaron Matei mentioned a new platform called Upscrolled, which was founded by a Palestinian. Users are fleeing there to escape this new wave of censorship.
So it's a fragmentation of the internet. The idea of a global town square is breaking apart because the rules are rigged.
Just like the global economy is fracturing because the dollar system is rigged. It's all connected. The loss of trust in the dollar, the loss of trust in the media, the loss of trust in the police. It's a systemic collapse of institutional trust across the board.
Okay, let's try to bring this all home. We've covered a lot of ground. We have a looming war with Iran that could crash the global economy. We have the dollar teetering on the edge of irrelevance. We have domestic federal forces acting like occupying armies on our own streets. And we have a widespread crackdown on speech to prevent us from talking about it all.
If you connect those dots, the picture that emerges is, well, it's pretty clear. The military escalation in Iran isn't a sign of strength. It's a desperate, frantic attempt to maintain hegemony as the system collapses. The crackdown on dissent isn't about safety, it's about control, because the status quo is failing and they know it.
Colonel McGregor had a final thought that I think we should leave the listeners with. He said, "We are on a dangerous road. At the end of it, we're going to regret it."
He's warning us. He's seen war. He knows what happens when complex systems break. If the U.S. pushes Iran and the Strait of Hormuz closes and the dollar collapses, we are not just looking at a bad recession. We are looking at a fundamental restructuring of our society.
Are we looking at that 1789-style revolution at home?
When people can't afford food and the government is shooting protesters in the street, history tells us that stability doesn't last for very long.
And that is a takeaway for today. The single most important thing to remember. The status quo is gone. Whether it's the price of oil, the value of the dollar in your bank account, or your right to protest on the street, the rules have changed overnight. You need to prepare for volatility.
Don't assume tomorrow will look like yesterday. That is the most dangerous assumption you can possibly make right now.
On that cheery note, if you found this analysis valuable, if you want the truth that others are too afraid to broadcast, hit the plus or follow button on your podcast app and give us a like. Subscribe to the Hot News channel for more deep dives.
Stay informed and stay critical.
Until we meet again, goodbye.